If you were president, what would you do about student debt?
I'd want to remove student debt, which is why I'm a big supporter of Elizabeth Warren.
We know.
But I'm a fan of some of the other candidates as well, and I think it's important.
See, I get it.
Yeah.
Eliminating student debt entirely. I just don't understand. Then someone's going to get shafted. So who's getting shafted? Who's not making money? Is it the people in the loan sharks, the universities?
I don't know why anybody has to lose any money or necessarily make a ton of money.
Well, there are loan companies who are expecting money from all the students, right? And so would Elizabeth Warren just say, hey, you guys, you're not getting your money. Students, you're cool.
No, I don't think any of the plans I've read or been explained, offer to, not make good on what any company is owned.
It comes from a tax, correct?
Yeah, probably. It comes from a fee. And she talked about a wealth tax, like 2 cents for the wealthiest Americans in the country. I mean, look, I was just reading about the stock market. And I want to make sure people understand this. So you'll have this president saying, the stock market's doing great, the Dow's great. Whether it's a city budget or our bond rating on the stock market, there's nothing about that data point or the four corners of that document that tells you whether life is worth living in the city, or whether you have an opportunity for a future here in the Commonwealth or in this nation, whether you can afford to buy a home, or anything about the opportunities before you. And that's the important thing here. The smallest universe are those in the investment community and those in the financial, or those who are really at the top of industry are dictating for the rest of us what our future will be, and that's just not. Hi, I'm Joe Curtatone, and this is my Platinum Hour.
Oh God, what's going on? Where am I going? Dad?
Yes, my son. I am Deuce, the deer god.
I'm so confused. Who am I?
Derek. Your true name is Dercules. Dercules.
Wait, what?
Yes. You are Dercules, the god of the forest. Season 5. Hosted by your favorite podcast host, Big Bochi. You already know the deal, mother. What's up?
And the double clap signifies the start of an episode. And before we begin, hey everybody, this is Conor, Holway of the Golden Hours podcast. And listen, if you by chance get any sort of value from this episode, whether you laugh, you cry, you're entertained, or you learn something, dude, just share it with a friend. And if you don't have friends, you shouldn't be
listening to podcasts.
Definitely not. And before I introduce my guest on the right, who else is in the building today? The two producers we got.
We have Brendan KILCOYNE.
And Sarah Slugs.
Hey, thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for having
My
us.
pleasure.
100%, man. You guys always just bring the mood up. Nonetheless, dude, thanks for coming back.
Hey, Conor, it's great to be here. I haven't seen you since October, I think.
I think it must have been September.
Or maybe September, yeah.
I think you were a little more tanned back then.
I had that canvassing tan from the urban tan from the streets of Somerville.
Have you ever done a spray tan?
No.
Don't lie to me.
No, I don't. Luckily, I don't need it, no.
Are you like totally dark in the summer?
I am. I'm pretty dark. I got that olive skin from my parents.
Well, on my right and the camera's left, I have Somerville Mayor Joe Curtatone. And so I reached out to your camp and I said, hey, listen, kids our age don't really care about the election and don't really care about voting. So we're kind of trying to figure out how and why people should get out and vote that are our age. So if we can get anything from the episode, I would love to do that.
Absolutely.
And you're like a big politics guy, so
I am.
So I figured you'd know.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do?
Hey, again, I'm Joe Curtatone. I'm the mayor of the city of Somerville, so I'm the chief executive of the city. So I've been mayor now. It's my 17th year. I've been in local politics, however, for 25 years now. I started in the local legislative body. Now it's called the city council. Then it was the board of aldermen. But I grew up right up at the hill here. Right up on Prospect Hill, and hung out in this square. My parents immigrated down the street in East Cambridge from a place called Gaeta, Italy, and then eventually escaped Cambridge for a better life in Somerville, up here on the hill. So I've been here in this town my whole life. graduate of the public schools, Somerville High School. But for the past quarter century, my life has been really absorbed by doing a lot of local work as a legislator, as an executive, as a policymaker. So I got to see how the city's landscape has changed in terms of how we see politics locally and from a local perspective, even nationally and globally. So it's fascinating now in this presidential race to see local perspectives and how they think about the candidacies of everyone on the Democratic side. And I don't think anybody really cares about the Republican side here in Somerville, but still, it's interesting to see.
Surprised.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I have some in my family, believe it or not.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's
Do you take
it's
that
how to
personal?
fathom. No, I think in a bewildering way, we had you try to be a good listener and listen to people's perspective. I think we become fractured in this country when we're dismissive of people's perspective, even on the
There's so
political
much of that
side.
going on right now. though.
It is, even within as a Democrat within the party, even within the party, and that's not the way to move forward. Although we have a president who, and those that support him, who thrives on that splintering, that fracturing, that divide. But yeah, it's. I don't take it personally. I used to have big arguments, and I still do with family and friends, especially on issues around immigration, especially in the neighborhood I grew up with. We were all kids whose families just immigrated here from places like in Italy or Portugal or Greece or Ireland. And
When did the Brazilian population really start popping up here?
I'd say that was in the mid '80s, starting in the mid '80s. Yeah,
Back when you were smoking weed under the bleachers.
Yeah. It was a little bit before on that side, but yeah, I know. Yeah, we didn't do that. We did other things under the bleachers, yeah. But about the mid '80s. But I would say, now, some from then to now we speak 52 languages in our cities and our schools, and more than a third of the population is foreign born. It's just really fascinating to see how the city's changed. But so when you have these conversations with people are immigrants themselves, and they'll talk about people should stand in line like I did. I'm like, there is no line, or they should follow the rules like I did. I'm like, hey, buddy, my father took your father's driving lesson because he couldn't speak English. So, it's hard. You want to respond with some empathy and accept ignorance with grace. But these days it's tough to do. It's tough to do.
This is totally random to start off with, but the gentleman that we met outside said what was the name of the material?
Slate.
There was slate in Prospect Hill? Like there was some sort of like slate depository? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah. I don't know exactly what the slate deposit was, but it's so. I think more of slate roofs. Prospect Hill is an interesting place. So we're in the epicenter of the sort of the birth of the nation, the American Revolution in Somerville. We used to be part of Charlestown. And the story goes they became too urban, so we left.
Really?
No, we actually were part of Charlestown to 1842. But up in Prospect Hill, where his family grew up and my family was, has a long history of American culture. Going back to Revolutionary times, American colonies. It's the site of the raising of the first flag of the United Colonies, the Grand Union flag. That's the flag that's on the mural in the building right down the street here at Barrister's Hall. But I don't know where the slate deposit is. It could be, quite honestly. I can tell you where other things are hidden from my youthful days up at the hill here and up in the tower.
Okay, I get it. So Somerville right now is one of the most eco-friendly cities in the country. Nice, man.
Yeah.
Shouts out to you. And so I'm wondering, and I see it in Cambridge too, and I see it in Boston, how do you apply some of the policies on a local level to a national level, and who's doing it? You know what I'm saying? Because I think one issue that I don't know if you guys would agree that kids our age actually care about would be climate change.
Yeah, definitely.
We're on the same page?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I would agree too. I mean, we see, people your age and younger, students participating in climate strikes and climate marches, advocating for climate action and climate equity.
Well, it's like trendy to do that if you're our age. Like, fight for the world.
But I mean, it's one of the reasons when we think about some of the candidates, whether you support Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or the other candidate, who gives voice to those types of concerns, the concerns of the generation that will lead our communities, our state, our country in the future. And how do we address that? How do we give voice or elevate that from a local level? Well, it's interesting because I'm a have a passionate interest in cities, not just because I'm here, but urban policy and cities and city regions. And if you look around the world, it's been at the city region level where municipalities and regions have set the standard for climate action. Mostly in places like Europe, but coming lately, and with a lot more energy is in here in the United States, because climate change is an existential threat to us all. So a good thing about being in Somerville is people not only cerebral, they lead with their values. We developed locally our own sort of Green New Deal called Somerville Climate Forward, where we looked at certain action areas around, transportation systems, building assets, our own city operations and other policies to think about a more, not just eco-friendly, more cleaner way, greener way of living, and building a community we all think of in the future. So it's easier to set that standard at the local level, even though you have a president and his supporters, a White House that actually is just fully abdicated their all responsibility to take on climate change. But there's great opportunity and necessity
for you to make those certain decisions, like get bigger bike paths, or I'll be honest, I don't know the specific stuff you've done. I just know that Somerville's like green as hell, man. Mm-hmm. But were those expensive decisions to make? And then on a global level, will it also be expensive? I mean, not global, national.
So a couple of practical things we did that weren't expensive at all was to think about how do we shift mobility behavior away from the automobile to more biking, walking, public transportation, buses. Even though not all buses are electric, still they're cleaner, lower carbon, more equitable forms of public transportation. To do that, you need to make sure those options, biking, walking, public transportation, buses, are the easy choice. You're not just forced by convenience to be in the automobile. And that's important in the most densely populated city in New England, the most congested traffic region in the United States. So, for instance, over the last 16 plus years, we've built more than 50 miles of bike lanes and share roads. We've built dedicated bike lanes. Now, that's more of a reallocation. Some of it's new investments, some of it's a reallocation of investments rather than just creating an environment and a culture for cars, because if you do that, that's what you get, to invite that type of mobility behavior, or putting down cheap paint to have a dedicated 24/7 bus priority lane on Broadway and Winter Hill, which has had great impact. Those type of things are very inexpensive options that have huge quality of life impacts, safety impacts, and help us move towards our Somerville climate forward goals as well. And and we think about fleet operations and our energy sources, fueling our operations and more renewables and cleaner forms of energy. Those are sometimes slightly but incrementally more expensive. It's becoming cheaper, but the benefits are huge over the long run.
It's an investment.
So, yeah, it's not, some investments are lives, but they're very practical things we can do today. And at the city level, going back to your other question, that we can do to set the standard of what that culture, that behavior should be. And we've shown with very, very immediate again, pragmatic investments or interventions on the assets that we own. Like, we can't control the T, but we do control our roadways. We do control the public realm, so we can think about how do we plan a city for people, not just automobiles. And that's important because even around our zoning, we can think about what are the buildings in all this development that's happening in Somerville, what are the values those assets will incorporate. We know that more than 2/3 of our carbon footprint come from greenhouse gas emissions caused from our building assets, and more than 1/3 from our transportation system. So although we don't control the state building code, we have the ability in our zoning, which we did, for instance, to make all new commercial buildings have to be LEED Platinum, and to control a lot of our public realm to, again, not just incentivize, invite more of a culture of biking, walking, and public transportation. Greater investments like the Green Line extension, those are huge investments, but they're going to pay big dividends too. And it's not so much a cost. The Green Line extension, for instance, in Somerville will take 25,000 motor vehicles off the streets every day, but it also, over the long term, adds $3 billion in new economic activity to the Commonwealth that don't exist today. It helps us build more than 10,000 housing units in a region that is in a housing crisis. It'll help us create more than 30,000 jobs where people are dying to live and work work right where they live. So, our investments, we need to play that out over the long term. And a lot of times we'll hear from the development community and others, well, it costs a lot to do that. Sometimes we have to navigate a more difficult path, but how we think about how we build those assets, how we plan for the future, it's a little bit more work. But if we're acting today with an eye tomorrow, those investments pay off. They return a positive at the end of the day and help us meet our climate action goals.
So when you say that public transportation is a third of your carbon footprint here, what other alternatives in terms of fuel sources are you encouraging public transportation to use outside of gas?
So let me clarify that. I would say transportation, mostly motor vehicles and trucks add more than a third of our greenhouse gas emissions, and that's mostly
You're
single
saying cars.
Yeah,
in the
cars.
city.
More of mostly single occupancy vehicles. So in Somerville, that traffic you see every day coming through here, we've studied this. We've done the analysis. 85% of the traffic that comes to our city is cut-through traffic, and mostly single occupancy passenger vehicles that aren't even stopping here. So, well, we
Where
know.
are they cutting through?
Are they
trying to get to?
They're
into
trying
the
to get
city?
to Boston. They're trying to get to Kendall Square. And so how do we deal with that in the long term? Well, we need cleaner vehicles, electric vehicles, EVs. I mean, they are here. They're coming. The technology continues to evolve. So at the national level, there should be a bigger prioritization to shift in towards, and the industry is starting to do that. Now, think about that. There are some industries, some companies already have a target date to shift towards all EVs, even automated vehicles. So cleaner sourced, fuel-sourced vehicles and electric buses. On the public transportation side, our buses and our rail system should be electrified as well. We have
Are
the
you
ability.
gonna get an electric vehicle?
I am going to get electric vehicle. We have two
What, are you getting a
cars.
Tesla?
I don't know if I can afford a Tesla, but we have two cars. I'm about to get rid of one. And if we do get a second one, it's that, and whatever we change, it's going to be an EV all the way.
Get that Tesla.
Yeah, I hope I can afford it. But either way,
Can't you write your own checks?
yeah, no, I can't. So, we know the technology. It's right there in front of us. We need to make the investments. And, what frustrates us all is if we had these sort of bureaucratic pushback from the state government. Well, it'll cost more. Well, what are we investing in the future? I mean, we're investing in our public health. We're investing in cleaning community. Invest in us being alive and in existence today and the future generations. And we would hope that we don't have, someday we'd like to turn to my kids and grandkids and say, we didn't threaten their existence just so we can, put our arms around our own conveniences here. For that, we need to think about that future now, and the economics work as well too.
See, the one thing why I think climate change is hard for a lot of people to grasp now is because it's like we don't really feel the effects of it, like in our day to day. It's like, oh shoot, it's like 50 degrees in February. This is kind of nice. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's in good mood, but it's hard for us to say we want to take all this action on something we're going to see results in 35 years. You know what I'm saying? So how do you make people really care to like, you got to go out and vote because this is actually going to impact you? You know what I'm saying? It's a tough thing to do.
But it's interesting. See, I do see the younger generation focused on this, and which is inspiring. I see people my age or slightly younger than me not as focused, other than Somerville. Somerville's easy to have that, to see that passion, that sort of see what advocacy.
My time's done. I just want to chill.
Right, but we actually do. When I speak publicly in a community, we talk about the localization of climate impacts right here. We feel it. We have, and we've shown with data and analysis over the last several years, the level and intensity and the amount of storms have increased. And we have increased flooding in areas of the city that hadn't seen this frequency in flooding in really a generation. That is causing damage to our property, to our assets. We see our roadways.
Whereabouts?
And, we've seen that most recently in places around the Lincoln Park neighborhood, down Washington Street toward Perry Park, so the southern and southwestern portion of the city. There have been other traditional flooding areas. Historically, Union Square used to flood. There's a river that goes underneath, Miller's River, that's beneath the square here. A lot of the work we see happening out here every day to separate our water and sewer systems, which is another major climate forward and environmental investment we're making, will alleviate that chronic flooding. But where these 100-year storms, you build out system for 100-year storms, or storms that theoretically may not occur or may occur once every 100 years, they're occurring a lot more frequent. And they impact the neighborhoods around the city. Severe. They're more intense. They're more severe. They last longer in duration, and we have more flooding. Not a lot of snow these days. I remember, I'm a little older than you. Conor, and I'm sure your dad would tell you that growing up in February, no snow. I mean, we need to separate what climate change versus weather, but you're seeing the localizations and impacts. It's nice out there, but again, we are seeing these storms occur more frequent. They're having greater impact on our assets, and then just the temperature itself, our roadways. We have to repave our roadways for bicyclists, for motorists, even for pedestrians, and we see our roadways deteriorating quicker than they have in the past too. That means a great investment in the city. So how do you sort of make the case at the local level, the importance of this? Well, I think people in this city certainly get the long-term impacts and the existential threat climate change is, but we can also put a very practical fiscal and financial impact on what we're feeling today and what that means. Whether it's, again, the deterioration of our assets, as I sort of outlined here, or the threat to some of our major economic districts, like the seaport, for example, which could be underwater, or the threat in terms of food security to the New England Produce Center, which is just in Chelsea. These are things that have been studied and analyzed, and are threatened, are real threats. And when we make that case, I think that plucks a value string to people, and what is more of an adaptive challenge to say, what can I do now? What is my responsibility as an individual, as an elected official, as a business leader, as a young person thinking about our future?
I know what you're saying, but what I mean is, like, how do you talk to someone our age and say, hey, this is an immediate issue? Like, look today how this is affecting you. Because it's easy for people to say, like, hey, there's this big threat coming. Or, like, dude, in 10 years, the seaport's going to be underwater. But how do you say, like, today, look at what's going on in the planet?
Right. No, again, how do you give that
I'm just trying to
context
say why people should get out there and...
Yeah, no, I agree. And they should. I mean, look, the planet is on life support.
I don't disagree with
It's on life support. So how do we make that case? It's hard for people to fathom. They can't see it. They can't touch it. So we need to show in a very practical way, this is what is happening here. And we need to give the context of what has changed over time. And we need to let them know what the impacts are to our public health, to our world security, to our economy, to how we live. Everything has to change or will change. And if we don't take action now, what are those consequences? How profound will they be? I think the case is much easier to make with young people. And I think young people here, because we hear young people talk about it in the context of how the economy isn't working for them. It's also directly related to climate change, because we see those who dominate the economy, from the fossil fuel industry to other forms, from other economic players who are dictating policy at Washington, the international level, which is further compounding the impacts of climate change. Young people are making that case every day. When we see young people say, well, here, those advocating for better transportation investment in, again, the most congested traffic region in the United States, here in the Commonwealth, the Metro Boston region. Well, we know more than a third of the greenhouse gas emissions come from vehicles, motor vehicles, mostly single passenger. So if we make investments, those advocating for greater investments in cleaner forms or expanded forms of public transportation, more equitable forms of public transportation, they're going to help us in the climate change argument and our meeting our climate goals here in Massachusetts.
So could you do that on a national level?
Absolutely.
So you would encourage the presidential candidate to invest in more public transportation nationwide?
Absolutely. We need a greater investment in public transportation nationwide. We're far behind some more other developing countries.
Would that kill the car industry?
No, listen, the motor vehicle will have a role in our society. It's probably going to be in a different form. Why does it have to? Should it be fossil fuel burning?
And it should be a spaceship.
It can be, well, whether they're automated vehicles or human-driven EVs, they're going to be there. They're going to be a vehicle on wheels, but there's no reason to continue. Really, the fossil fuel industry is an economy that's not going to be sustained over the long term. So the motor vehicle industry understands this, the automobile industry, they get it. They're just holding off, and really they're dominating in big business and the fossil fuel industry, and their lobbyists are dominating Washington politics and policy setting. And that's why the United States is lagging far behind the rest of the world. That's one of the reasons, the driving forces why the United States got out of the Paris Accord, the Paris Climate Agreement. And young people, and we need to continue to make that case and explain that context to people of all ages. Young people do get that. That's why they're out there on climate strikes and taking climate action. That's why our high school students and young people around the country are leading that charge and creating that narrative. And they're looking at policymakers like me at the local level, asking, what are you doing at the local level to meet our climate forward goals, to promote climate action here and climate equity? And we feel that. That's not just done by Joe Curtatone, the mayor. That really is my role and my responsibility that I embrace to give voice to those concerns, to those hopes, to those dreams, to these young people and the rest of the community.
Hey, any questions from you two?
I do have one.
Slugs.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
So do you have any plans in the near future for, I mean, I know you've done, like, Somerville is so eco-friendly, but do you have any more plans on how to maintain that and to make it, like, promote it even more?
Yeah, we've outlined that over the next several years, what we're doing in Somerville Climate Forward. Our goal is to be carbon neutral by 2050. And
What does that mean?
That means really, net zero emissions to contributing to our carbon footprint by 2050.
No carbon footprint coming from Somerville.
And I was proud to lead a coalition of the mayors of the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition, 15 communities in the inner core, to set a regional goal. And now we have the Commonwealth setting that goal as well. And it's important because that is a narrative, not just a narrative goal. We need to put a stake in the ground in what we're going to do. But I was also excited to join several other mayors to commit to utilizing only renewable clean sources of energy by 2045. So in our Climate Forward plan, we have those goals, but our goals are also focused around, again, our buildings and our transportation systems, our operations. So we'll continue to move those plans forward to make sure all new buildings, again, are meeting at a minimum LEED Platinum.
What does that mean?
Platinum, certain goals, so they're net zero buildings.
So what, they have to, do they have to change their source of
energy? Yeah, depending more on renewables. We're actually going to get the first building of its kind, about a 500,000 square foot lab commercial building built by Edge Technologies, a Dutch company. I figure is up Norway in Somerville, down by Assembly, and they did some really cool stuff in terms of their, I think they used several thousand iterations of the building to position it against the sun.
Solar power?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And utilizing different forms of renewables and clean forms of energy to source the building. But also, how do you maintain the envelope? And how's it move, the efficiency of the building envelope itself. So, again, those policies, again, around our transportation systems, future development in the city, also building up resiliency and adaptation, because we are going to feel the impacts further exacerbated and compounded over time of climate change. We're trying to stay off the level of flooding that may occur. What happens if and when the Mystic River rises and the Amelia Earhart Dam is breached? What's that do to places around Assembly Row and those
Surfs
communities?
up, dog.
Surfs up. Not a lot of waves, but a lot of wading, we could say. But so the plan speaks to some very bold long-term things and some practical things we're going to do over the next several years around the things we control right now, while advocating for other policy change around building code and so forth at the state level.
B, anything, man?
I was just going to ask, so when you say your plan for 2050 is totally carbon neutral, is that just public spaces, public transportation, or are you trying to actually subsidize private residents to go solar, or people to actually buy electric cars?
Yeah, it's actually citywide. So it's not just public buildings; those are important. We're contributed to our carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. Make no mistake, and public transportation systems as well. But we have programs now, to our community aggregation program, where you can buy all your sources of energy. You clean, and I just signed up. I'd ask people to do the same. You can do the same. You can visit the city's website, www.somervillema.gov, and you can look that information up. You just click on your utility bill, put your account number in, and you can source all your energy from clean, renewable forms of sources of energy to your home. So we're continuing to incentivize homeowners to do the same there. We're trying to understand how we can further help them make investments in and solar panel programs. And that technology is going to continue to evolve, so we'll continue to partner with the Commonwealth and other programs nationally, hopefully develop with a new president, that we can help homeowners with investments and subsidies to make that change. That's going to take time, but it's something we need to be focused on. Right now in the city, and in terms of what we own, we're also focused, again, on the public realm, the public right-of-way in our streets. Who owns that? We always say if you plan a city for cars, that's what you're going to get. The cities and city regions in the future will thrive if they stop planning communities and regions for people. So we're doing a parking study. of the city to understand our parking policies. We want to continue to reduce parking in the city. We want to continue to skinny down and give major roads a diet to invite more dedicated bus lanes and protected bike lanes, so people find that the easy choice of mode of transportation to utilize here. We're already expanding the Green Line through Somerville, and then extending the community path all the way to all the way into Boston, which we're really pumped up about.
Slugs, you'll be able to take the
I know the
studio.
Green Line goes
Yeah.
right outside my apartment.
Yeah, it opens up next year, 2021. By the end of 2020, be fully operational. Also, we want to see the Silver Line
How many
dedicated
doubters
bus
did you
revenue.
have
How many doubters?
on the Green Line?
I always say, as mayor, and one of the sad things I have to do, I have to go to a lot of wakes and funerals. I went to more Green Line wakes over the last
sure.
17 years, and when it was on, it was off, it started, they paused it, and even before that, it's been decades of advocacy for a lot of people, many who aren't around anymore for one reason or another.
You outlasted the haters.
Yeah. I think they were just, it shouldn't have been that hard. The best light rail project rated in the country. It was so good, even Trump couldn't knock it off the list. He supported it. That brings so much environmental justice to environmental justice communities and those who felt, again, those who've been at the brunt end of the of climate change. And one thing we need to keep in mind when we talk about climate action, I stress is climate equity. We need to make sure that as we take on, really start operationalize climate action, that those people, mostly vulnerable populations, who've suffered through climate change the most, they have to be able to benefit as equal, the same as you and I, for any climate action here in the city. So
Wait, why is the Green Line extension eco-friendly? I don't really get it.
it's a light rail, electric trolley.
Oh,
That's
it's
what it-
electric.
Electric trolley, yeah, and that's what
Not
it is.
gas.
Not gas. And a lot of people, no, I want people to understand, because some people don't realize, if you don't, the commuter rail here is diesel. So you have black carbon fibers that go into the communities,
That thing's
And-
just a bullet of gas. Man.
Yeah, and we need to electrify. And we need to have regional rails, and it needs to be electrified. And, I remember about 2 months ago, I spoke at the Fiscal Management Control Board, which is the body that controls the money right now. And this board was established by the legislature and Governor Baker to get the finances of the MBTA in order. We had a presentation from the city and city region of Toronto on their electric and regional rail system. It was so fascinating. I was there to speak about something else. When I got up to speak, I said, the first question I have is, why aren't we leading this conversation? Why isn't Massachusetts leading this conversation for the rest of the country? It's just,
Have you
we've
been
been,
to Toronto?
yeah, it's a fascinating city.
What a city.
Yeah.
Is that like, I understand you got your own thing going here with Somerville, but like if you could look up to one city, is there one?
I think definitely on transportation, that's one that I admire.
Is there a city
I
around?
think everybody wants to be like Somerville last time I checked. Yeah.
I don't know if Mayor Siddiqui would say the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
Is there any like one city where like that's the gold standard for running a city?
I look at a lot of cities and I get inspired. And, certainly a lot of European cities. Obviously they've done a lot around sustainability and climate action.
What's the best one?
I don't know if there's a best one, but I've been
People are pumped about Copenhagen. I know that,
Copenhagen,
right?
Hamburg has done some real cool stuff. I think you take something out of every. It's what I gone back when you asked about how do you at the local level have an impact nationally. Those cities and city regions have had an impact nationally and internationally. We've lauded them from afar and tried to adopt their approach to being innovative and being bold and implementing bold systemic change when you think about mobility and implementing climate action, or even policies around housing. A lot of what countries and places of Norway are doing. When we think about building a just and equitable community for the future, that anybody who wants to live here actually has a true and authentic chance to stay here, but also to be part of every healthy, happy, and productive city as well.
If you were president, what would you do about student debt?
I'd want to remove student debt, which is why I'm a big supporter of Elizabeth Warren.
We know.
But I'm a fan of some of the other candidates as well, and I think it's important.
See, I get it.
Yeah.
Eliminating student debt entirely. I just don't understand. Then someone's gonna get shafted. So who's getting shafted? Who's not making money? Is it the people in the loan sharks, the universities?
I don't know why anybody has to lose any money or necessarily make a ton of money.
Well, there are loan companies who are expecting money from all the students, right? And so would Elizabeth Warren just say, hey, you guys, you're not getting your money. Students, you're cool.
No, I don't think any of the plans I've read in or been explained, offer to, not make good on what any company has owned.
It comes from a tax, correct?
Yeah, probably. It comes from a fee. And she talked about a wealth tax, like 2 cents for the wealthiest Americans in the country. I mean, look, I was just reading about the stock market. I want to make sure people understand this. So you'll have this president saying, the stock market's doing great, the Dow's great. Whether it's a city budget or our bond rating on the stock market, there's nothing about that data point or the four corners of that document that tells you whether life is worth living in the city or whether you have an opportunity for a future here in the Commonwealth or in this nation, whether you can afford to buy a home or, anything about the opportunities before you. And that's the important thing here. The smallest universe are those in the investment community and those in the financial, or those who are really at the top of industry are dictating for the rest of us what our future will be, and that's just not right.
The economy isn't a good indicator of people's happiness, you don't think?
I think
people are working.
It is one, but it doesn't indicate whether you have a equal and authentic opportunity as everyone else to rent or buy a home, to get a job, to start a business, to go to college or send your kids to college, to pay that debt. It is not the only indicator.
It's a good generalization.
It's a very overgeneralization.
Well, if more people are working,
what the market is giving you, the data point, is a confidence on the investment and financial sectors of our community and of industry. Confidence in what the future is. Their confidence. But it doesn't necessarily describe our confidence, right?
So how do you gauge American happiness on a global?
Well, it's interesting you ask
level?
about that because Somerville were the first, I'm going to say we're the first, though someone proves me wrong, first city in the world to measure happiness. We conduct a happiness survey.
What's the rating?
Out of a 1 to 10, we're close to an 8. It might be an 8.
Are you on the 7 side or the 8 side?
No, we're on the close to the 8 side. It's high. But what the original thing we wanted to know is how do we, or can we, and as policymakers impact your subjective happiness, and is there a correlation between your satisfaction or dissatisfaction with city services and happiness? And there is, because our point was, we want to make sure when you walk out, no matter what's happening in the world today, when you come home, or when you walk out your front door, whatever you touch, feel, and see and experience in the community, you feel confidence here and something good about wanting to be here long term, because we want you to stay here long term. We want to make sure you have an opportunity, or that you have at least a willingness to think about starting a family here, just be part of this community, be vested, or send your kids to school here, or start a business. And that was really informing to us, So from our happiness survey, you can gauge happiness in the nation, and that's been well documented, even from some of the least financially well-off nations or less developed. And again, if you're happy, you tend to be healthier and more productive, and that's the point of understanding happiness. And money in of itself can make you, I think, study more happier.
Absolutely.
But the financial market, not everybody is experiencing that financial benefit in America. There's another index called the Social Progress Index in the world, and we rank very low compared to other countries because.
What is that?
Well, there's
assess?
and on a nation state level, it assesses many things. Equity from many different fronts, and also policies around the environment and sustainability, your health, safety, security, all kinds of things. Sort of political transparency and corruption, all kinds of things at the nation state level. But the important thing is here in this country, there is a major gap in social progress, social equity. That's what young people and people in general, but especially young people, fighting for every day.
Listen, I know what young people are fighting for.
Yeah.
But it's not all young people.
No, right.
I'm newly into politics. Like, probably since I had Mayor McGovern up, I've started, and this was like a year and a half ago, I've started to understand it just a little bit more, and I'm a little more tuned into the election. But it'd be a vast understatement to say that kids my age care about the election. And I don't know why that is. I know it's not like that with other generations, and I'm not speaking for the collective of people, because there are kids who are out there like, yo, this is big.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But at least in my demographic, in Boston, I don't think there are that many people that are going to go out and vote.
Yeah, I don't disagree. One, I agree. Not as many people.
Was
And
it
this
like
is
this when
in
you were growing
general.
up, too?
Yeah, in general. I mean, people say more people voted got them, but in the United States, doesn't have a very great track record in terms of voter engagement and turnout and in the electoral process. What has been inspiring in this presidential election, I think you see, at least from my perspective, and intuitively, you sense a greater level of participation of younger voters for whichever candidate they're supporting. But in general, yeah, in the United States, compared to, I mean, you're required to vote in Australia. We have 98% voter turnout. I mean, look at the turnout with so much at stake.
Do
when
they
you think
penalize
about,
you if you don't?
I think they penalize you.
They tax you.
Yeah,
if
they
you don't.
tax you. I remember I had a presentation here years ago. You get a tax for a fee. But the point is, with so much at stake for the future, while at a time when our democratic institutions, our democracy is under assault and under attack, and with existential threats like climate change confronting us every day, and a White House that is basing its policy largely on white nationalism, you would hope you'd see even greater turnout in this country. Now, I think it's, from what I recall, it seems like a lot more, but far short that I think a free and democratic society should realize,
So you obviously want Elizabeth to win.
Yes.
That's the hometown hero, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been a big fan.
But you're kind of obligated too, right?
There's always a sense of
Like,
local
did you have to vote
obligation.
for John Kerry? Probably, right?
I voted for him because I liked him in that race. Yeah. I
But
mean,
what I'm saying is you probably
yeah.
like every Massachusetts politician.
Well, you always vote the hometown team, but I've always voted for the best candidate, and that's for me, and I'm sure you have also. But you sense, especially when someone that you know or work with has been part of your delegation, you want to. And you've had that experience of them working hard for the constituents. Elizabeth has gone to Washington and been true to her word and been a fighter.
this
so many
is
things.
your buddy though too.
No, of course it is. But I actually, I'm a fan. I know some of the other candidates. I
know Duvall, I'm sure.
I know Duvall very well. I was the first mayor to endorse him when he ran for governor. And we have a lot of great candidates running on the Democratic side. And anybody who wants to put themselves out there in any elected electoral process deserves a lot of credit. And presidential politics today, I can remember this much growing up. Boy, the dynamics have changed. The rhetoric is far more negative and more intense, and social media certainly compounds that. But I love the fact that candidates are putting out abnormal ideas, advocating for bold systemic change, and as one person, I think that's what this country needs. So while I'm supporting Elizabeth, I'm a fan of people like Bernie Sanders, even Pete Buttigieg. I happen, people may not be fans of all the others, but I happen to know who Mike Bloomberg is. I got to meet him in the mayoral organizations like the U.S. Conference of Mayors on movements like Mayors Against Illegal Guns. But I'm with Elizabeth Warren because I think she's the fighter, the person who understands and will take the most deliberate action, has plans to take on the major issues, the legacy challenges of our time for all generations. And I think she's doing an incredible job, and she's so smart. And but if she's not the candidate, we talked about canvassing earlier. I'll be out there knocking doors and canvassing for whoever the Democratic candidate is. And that's what I hope we'll see from everyone in this election, that we stop trying to break each other down and fracturing not just the party, but really the message. I think that plays right into this president's hands, and that cannot happen.
On a strategic approach, I mean, you've won a ton of elections. Shouts out to you, man.
Thank you.
What would you do in the Warren campaign to position yourself better? Because it's just like it's a free-for-all, right? From at least my perspective right now. Like, and how does she differentiate from the Sanders campaign? What do you do differently?
Yeah, it's a good question, because you're right. You have to distinguish yourself because it's a choice. People are going to make a choice. I think people know there's a lot of smart candidates. They certainly know Elizabeth's very smart. I think if I were her, I mean, everyone knows she's very progressive, very much to the left. I would say for the candidates, if I was advising strategy of them, you don't have to compete for who's more far left than the others. We have to speak to all people too, because at the end of the day, the country's made up of people in the middle, people on the left, even the Democratic side, even the Democratic, slightly white conservative people want to know that you're going to give voice to the issues they're concerned about. So keep speaking truth to power to those issues. It's really important.
You'd be surprised at what people care about.
No, I know. And it's not all the things. Some people, like you say, may not resonate that climate change is real and impacts them today.
I can tell you, like, surface level, a lot of kids my age aren't like, what are their policies? They're like, okay, we could vote for a gay guy, we could vote for like the billionaire, we could vote for the woman, or we could vote for Bernie Sanders. Like, that's kind of the thought process.
Yeah.
So how do you cut through that with actual ideas? Like,
Well,
hey, this is actually how this is going to impact you.
Well, I think that's important. That's something they should be focused on. How do I resonate? If you're not resonating with a particular segment of the population, how do you resonate with them? How do you pluck a value string for them to say, he or she's going to give voice to what I care about, and she's going to fight for everyone. And that's the challenge, right? And I think she needs to be focused on that. So this race, I think Super Tuesday, after Super Tuesday, we're going to see candidates drop out. I hope she's still in this race. But
She's got to win Mass, right?
Has to win Massachusetts.
Is it a toss-up?
No, I think she'll win Mass, but I think it's going to be a battle. I think Bernie Sanders is a great candidate. I just think about Somerville. Someone's going to be tight here.
You think so?
Yeah, well, listen, he's a great candidate. I think there's some other good candidates there as well. I forgot what the other point I was going to make, but listen, Elizabeth Warren's my senator. She's my friend, and she's been a supporter, but I believe in her, and that's why I'm finding out. And I'd submit, it'd be interesting. I wonder how they would view her if she wasn't a woman in this race. I think that's been I think that for her has been a hurdle. But I love her. I love her fight. I really do. I love her fight, and I would love to see her debate Donald Trump. I really would.
You really don't like that guy?
No, I don't. I don't. I don't even respect him. That's the point. I've had other people. We can always not we can and to not like someone, even and not respect anyone elected office. We're gonna just have a lot of people. Well, I may not support politically, but I like them personally, and I have respect for them. But the issues we differ on are that important to me or you. So I never thought in my lifetime. I don't think I speak for millions of other people would see a White House that is led by a person like him.
It's interesting how this election and the presidency reflects the country, isn't it? It's fascinating.
It's a divided country.
It's a very changing country.
Yeah, I've always had the opinion that Donald Trump hasn't divided the country. He's just capitalized on the divide. He's unveiled it, and I am very concerned. Yeah, I'm very concerned that he could win. And this is why people need to be out to vote, because I do agree. I think Bernie Sanders said something that I absolutely agree with, and it was along the lines that to beat Donald Trump, we're not going to chip away at his base. We need an historic, massive voter turnout, which is why I'm concerned especially when you say, a lot of people aren't tuned into this. They'd be surprised, and sometimes in Massachusetts and in some of we live in this fishbowl. So the rest of the country is like that. We need a massive, historic voter turnout, whoever the candidate is, to take the country back and take it away, reverse this direction to an uncertain and dangerous future, to a more solid footing and a promising future, whomever the Democratic nominee is.
So in the back of your mind, right, you're a politician. You want to rise up in your career. Liz Warren says, dude, you have my back this whole time. I'm 100% going to have you in my cabinet if I win. What job would you want to take in the cabinet?
Yeah, good question.
And that's obviously, you're obviously thinking about that, right?
No,
don't lie to me.
No,
man.
I'm not. I don't think I'm going to get a call for a cabinet position.
If this mayor who's had my back this whole time, who's running this big city, says like, "Hey, I could definitely use some of your skill sets in the White House," you're taking it, dude.
Yeah,
Who else gets that call?
I'd ask her to let me be in charge of personnel the 6 months. Let me just root out all the white nationalists and all the people driving the policy against all that anti-immigration policy. I like to be the person to help go in there, just clean house.
Personnel. So
I actually, and I say that in light, but I'm also serious. I want to see a president come in and really make some bold changes. I mean, people have to understand it's not just the policies and the decisions he's made that we see on TV and we hear the stories about, but there's been such a change in a loss of institutional knowledge, intelligence within the different agencies, like trying to gut the EPA, and judges that have been put in radically to the right, and very conservative judges in the federal courts, dozens and dozens. That should be concerning to people as well. But hey, if I get a call for Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders asking me to be in the cabinet, I'm going to seriously consider it. So, absolutely.
What would you want, though?
I don't know. What do you think I'd be good at?
Chief of the Italian Tan.
The Italian tan. Maybe ambassador to Italy. And we can
That'd
take
be
this program over there. And I know some spots. Let me tell you, this podcast will go over well.
That'd be sweet.
We get your Rosetta Stone lesson. We'll be all set, ready to go.
I can already speak Italian.
There you go.
Questions.
I have one.
Well, one real quick question. Actually, go ahead, Slugs.
So if she wins, if Elizabeth Warren wins, what does that mean for Somerville? Like what's going to happen here?
Slugs. Great question, dude.
One, I actually think, and for everyone, I think it's going to be jubilant here. We're going to be excited. It's going to be promising of the future parade. We'll make sure we will get Elizabeth Warren, President-elect Warren, back here. But also means we're going to gear up for another election because there's going to be a U.S. Senate seat open. So we're going to be arguing over who's the best candidate to replace Elizabeth Warren as the U.S. Senator.
Why you want her to win.
No. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be me. I want to come back on this show and do some electoral analysis, the candidates that'll be running for that seat. So that would be interesting. That'd be actually pretty magical for, I think, for the country, for Massachusetts, if she were elected.
But what policies that she would institute would actually directly impact Somerville?
I will reversal of the anti-immigrant policies and fighting for immigration reform. It would impact the people in this city who are our neighbors, who are our friends, who kids go to school, my kids, who are hiding in the shadows these days and looking over their shoulder, fear of having their families ripped apart. That I could see her taking immediate action on.
Did ICE come to Somerville recently?
ICE, as you probably heard, President Trump and his head of ICE instituted a policy where they're going to have members of their tactical team, SWAT team, go assist ICE agents in the different regions, in this case the Boston region, and serving warrants or, so we haven't seen them in the city yet. We haven't seen them there. And what we're doing is making sure we're giving out all the information so people know their legal rights, that they don't have to answer their doors, and what to do and what not to do. So if they're not, we don't see them prowling the streets or anything like that. But again, it's another indication that his another election year gimmick from him that has impact on real human lives and families. And
for reference, ICE is they're like the anti-immigration task force, and they go out and they look for illegal immigrants and they deport them.
Yeah, immigrations and customs enforcement. They've gone beyond simple immigration and customs enforcement to again raiding families' homes. Again, now they're going to backstop it with tactical units. We're talking about people in armored individuals to serve, to go arrest people for civil infractions, not even criminal infractions, civil infractions. So I think, certainly there I would like to see that on re-entering the Paris Agreement, the climate change, Paris climate agreements, taking a lead worldwide on the worldwide stage to lead the charge for climate action. I would love to see further investment in modern transportation policy to invest in our transit systems and in housing. Treating housing as a human right. The federal government long ago started to get away from the affordable housing priorities of this nation, and certainly this president has not embraced the need to invest in affordable housing. I have no doubt, Elizabeth, President Warren would take that on right away in the first days of her first weeks of her administration.
Brendan,
I just wanted to go back to differentiating Warren from Sanders, because I find that to be her biggest threat right now. He's, from all indications, is the front runner right now in the polls, and I feel like he's kind of been this authentic progressive for 20 plus years. He's been championing these causes. He kind of brought it to the forefront in 2016, whereas Warren, she was a conservative back in the the 1980s. she didn't endorse Sanders in 2016. So I think a lot of people have like an issue kind of with her consistency, and I think they see Sanders as someone who's more authentically progressive, someone who's, you know, actually championed these ideas for a long time. I'm just wondering how she can come out as more authentic and real and actually get behind these ideas, because I'll stop in a sec, because I mean, obviously another thing we haven't talked about is the Native American, you know, ancestry, and that's another kind of part of her authenticity taking a hit, and I feel like that's her biggest issue right now in differentiating herself from Sanders. So how can she remediate that?
Yeah.
So real quick, sorry. So your biggest barrier to her as a candidate is you don't trust her as a candidate?
I'm trying to take the shoes of her campaign advisor. I think that's her biggest issue, and I'm wondering how she can change that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't on the Native American thing. I'll be the first to agree. I think they botched that early on and how to handle that, but I don't see that really as an issue. At least I haven't heard that come up. I think her record and her willingness to take on the Wall Street elite and to fight, against poverty and I think she's led that fight along with Sanders. No denying Senator Sanders has been a champion of those things as well. I guess, if I'm going to step back and not say, no, I'm not supporting any candidate, where do you see the sort of the chessboard aligning here? And if you have two, I think you have multiple strong progressive candidates, it's hard to keep jumping over the next person, far to the left, far to the left, far to the left. There is space to pivot to, not to change your stance, but to address the concerns. I think Senator Sanders has actually done this as well to appeal to moderates as well, not just those who are far to the left. And we'll hear people, they'll categorize people like some of us as socialists. Not so. I think he's had a pretty broad base and broad message, and there's space there for her. This is just my opinion, strictly on the strategic front. I don't, at least when polling's polling. You can like it or not like it. I haven't seen there been issues on the credibility front. I think Senator Sanders just captured a lot of momentum these days, and that's been realized in some of the caucuses and primaries early on. I think she did a bang-up job, and to whatever extent debates mean anything these days, the last debate, to show, one, she is a strong, thoughtful, bold leader she's willing to take on, and you can get indication how she would be in a debate. As well, Senator Sanders did a good job as well when she was really taking on Mike Bloomberg in that last debate. Interesting to see, I think it's tonight, the next debate, if I'm not mistaken. I think those moments can help pivot or position her and distinguish her further from Senator Sanders. Whether that's enough, we'll find out. I think we're going to find out on Super Tuesday more than anything. I don't think it's one thing in these races, though. I think you have broad coalitions, some more robust than others, backing certain candidates. And it'll be interesting to see as the field evolves in terms of changing, where do those votes shift? Where does support go behind? So it's probably not a clear-cut answer. I don't know that one answer. I think if they knew it, they would have done that by now. Right. It would have worked by now. So from campaign, sort of like Monday morning quarterback the campaign a little bit, yeah, I think she's got to find space. And there is, not just trying to continue to shift on the left of Bernie Sanders, vice versa, because I think broad coalitions win races. It's not one part of the electorate versus the other.
Are you in election time? Are you nervous or are you excited?
When I run?
No, right now, presidential.
I'm curious and excited on the Democratic side. I'm interested to see who the candidate will be. I will be nervous no matter what, because
November.
Yeah, because we have a president who, it shouldn't be a surprise, overcame an impeachment. If this president overcomes impeachment and pulls out another victory, which is not out of the realm of possibility, that would be frightening. That's a scary scenario, and I hope we know that that's a real scenario, which is why I go back to, I agree with what Senator Sanders said. We need a historic massive voter turnout. So if you're watching at home, you're listening at home, you got to get out and vote. You got to be involved. You got to pay attention. Whatever one issue concerns you the most, that plucks your value string and makes you get out and be active in this campaign, whatever that Democratic nominee is, or even right now, get out there and canvass. Tell your friends, be active. It's going to be that important, and not just Massachusetts.
What would you do about legalizing psychedelics?
Legalizing psychedelics.
They're in Oregon. They're doing it. They're legalizing psilocybin, like mushrooms,
Really?
for therapeutic use.
Colorado, I think.
Colorado.
Interesting. Actually,
I know Colorado. Yeah.
you know, I heard, believe it or not, I was watching Jimmy Kimmel last night, and Gwyneth Paltrow was talking about it. She has something to do around psychedelics. It was interesting.
What was she taking mushrooms?
I know. I don't know.
Oh my God, I saw. She just. Yeah, my mom
I
sent me something.
I caught something at the end of it about. I was like, "What is she talking about? Mushrooms?" This was last night.
Yeah, she had like a. I don't know.
She had a bad trip or something?
No, she was selling something.
She has something around.
And
Anyway.
I thought it was a joke, but
She just
it
want
was.
to take some drugs.
Next time here, I want to see some samples here, Con, enough and not so I can
Well,
speak with experience. No, listen, if there's anything organically we can provide that is medicinal that can help people, I think we should be considering that.
I agree.
I was not, like many people, I've come full circle. I mean, medical marijuana, and if I known years ago that could have helped my father have less pain when he was battling cancer, of course, I would have sparked one up with him just to make him do it.
You used to be against it?
Yeah, well, I had reservations about it, I guess, really, but it made sense. No, I think it's cultural, how you're brought up, for me.
Same thing with my dad,
I
too.
think, yeah, I mean, legalizing marijuana, I was fully for it, but I've and just like we think about, we got to think about how do we ease people's pain, give them comfort, or how do we reduce harm? Yeah, we think about harm reduction more than taking on the opioid epidemic, which is another thing I think Elizabeth would do right off the bat. I believe in safe, supervised consumption sites.
We talked about it last time.
I have to, and I was totally against. But when you look at the data, and we can actually save lives.
When are yours opening? Don't you have one
We're
open?
seeking to try to get one open this year. So stay
Where?
tuned. We haven't decided where yet. I don't know what form it'll take, but I'll be heading out to Canada. I'd love to come on and talk about that down the road.
Cool.
Full disclosure, we have addiction in my family.
Dude.
And
Hey.
yeah,
Mine too.
Yeah. So listen. So anything that we can do, the way I've come around on this is to ease people's pain, to help them through suffering, to reduce harm. These are things we should be considering.
So you would try out. You would say, yeah. You
I don't know. I got to be immediately. I don't know a lot about psychedelics. So I've never tried them. I don't know if I try them. I would like to
I've never had it either.
Maybe we'll have Conor try it, and I can study him on this show and make my observations.
I'm too heavy on the OCD. So if I was to take the sauce, man, whoa, this whole place would probably be burnt down. Honestly. What? Right now, as a mayor, like you're in your 10th term, and I know you're totally inspired by, and you're passionate about helping people, but like on an ego tip, what inspires you? Because like you've had the same job for 10 years, you're never like, dude, I would love to, just kind of get the bigger job. I feel like I'll go through that for the rest of my career. I'll always want a little more.
So go back to happiness. When you do your work, what do you love? Why do you do it? What is fulfilling about it? For me, and I won't. I think it's my 17th year. I won't do this 17 more years as mayor. I've done 8 years in the local legislative body. And when I took the job, I told my wife, listen, I'll definitely be there for probably 6. But it is for me, and I think it probably always will be, even if someone calls me to be a cabinet secretary, which I doubt will happen, but the most fulfilling job I've done professionally. And it's because of this. You see the tangible impacts of what the decisions you make, real time almost. You sense that you can help people, whether it's helping someone who has a problem in their neighborhood, in their family, a particular challenge, or trying to implement and create a bold vision of how your city is going to grow over the next 10 to 20 years, or fight for that green line that you finally see. You see not just the bricks and mortar, but at the local level, it's really, they say, where the rubber meets the road, really on people's lives. And for me, having grown up here, it has a little special meaning, a little bit more special meaning to me. I just love it. It's a really cool
And
job.
you have the leverage to make your own decisions.
Yeah, it's the work I guess it's the saying. It's good. It's great to be the big fish in a small pond. It's more about being up close to the work you're doing. You have a little more leverage as a mayor in cities, and I just love the complexity. Cities are like complex ecosystems, and if you think about these systems that we contribute to on public health, on public safety, and education, and so forth, how do we make decisions? How do our decisions impact those systems that create what we envision the community to be? So that's why I love this job.
I know. I think that's the one thing I learned from the last episode and this episode is like you have a really in-depth understanding of like all the working parts of the city. Like you would think some people just care about like the economy or you talking to education system, but it's like no, there are like all these little things I wouldn't even think about.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts.
Dude,
and
does your brain ever like stop?
No, so you talked OCD. I'm on the ADHD side, so
I got both, man.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to sit here for an hour?
I am. My staff says we're gonna have an hour meeting. Like, okay, make sure you get the bulk of it in the first 15 minutes. After that,
Whoa.
I'm thinking about the rest of the day. It's like let's get rapid fire, man.
Have you always been that way?
Yeah. Always been. I think.
High motor.
Yeah, and I think that's been, a lot of
I
people
keep
like that. For
telling
me, it's
everyone-
been a benefit. It's just, got to control it. Never been medicated on it, though.
I keep telling everyone, I'm like, this guy Joe, man, he's got a motor. Ready to go.
Thank you. I love it. I'm telling you, I get pumped up every day. It's a hard job. It's not an easy job. And even something good you like doing with this much work, it takes a piece of you every day. But
What was your most recent political beef?
Oh, it was last night. It was a little bit. It was. I sit on the school committee. I'm one member. One of the things I pride myself on is we make sure we took politics out of the school. In other words, who got jobs, who got promoted, and the schools have been a great success. So I sit as one member, as ex officio, along with the president of the city council on the school committee. And last night was a tough night. It was one of those moments when you had to face the heat, and we had a collective bargaining protest. There's a contract negotiation going on with the paraprofessionals who have all the respect in the world for us. My kids have going for the Somerville Public Schools. They've had an impact on my kids' lives. But, in those type of moments, when you're in a room and people every day, you know them personally, they're kids and they're yelling at you and they're making themselves feel, those are the moments where you have to stand, this is what leadership is, where you got to listen and you got to have some empathy and you got to accept, whether you agree or not, that anger, that criticism, you take it with grace.
Wait, why were they pissed?
Well, they want a contract, and they
wanted more money.
Yeah, it's.
For what?
I think that in their minds they want to be treated fairly.
What are paraprofessionals?
Paraprofessionals, they help run the classroom and deal with the students, with the teachers. I mean, they're invaluable
like
to the
teachers'
teachers.
aid.
Yeah. It's actually they are paraprofessional. Many of them are aspiring to become teachers, but they don't get paid a lot of money, and it is true. I mean, and years ago the job was viewed as part-time. It's really not a part-time job because they're working full-time hours, and their issues are legitimate, and it's just one of those issues we're bargaining at the table. I think they feel frustration with us as an elected body, and that we're not moving fast enough, and that's as I explained to my colleagues, this is at a time where our democracy is under assault. This is democracy in action. We need to embrace it, but it's hard.
So how did you answer that? Because I'm sure that's.
I actually
not
just
a
sat
popular
there,
list,
and,
right?
and what I could do best is engage people in silence, give them my full attention, and I did, and listen to their criticism and their concern. Again, you have to accept it with grace. It's hard to do. I wasn't always the best listener. I think leadership really is about being a great listener as well, and you learn that over time. And we'll get to a contract with them. I know that, but it's hard getting there. You always want things to go smoothly, and it's not always going to go smoothly. This is part of the job. So it's not really a political battle. It was one of those tough moments.
So you haven't had any like high profile beef with like another senator where you guys are like pissed at each other?
I would say.
Also, we tried to set up this episode as a panel between Walsh, you, and Siddiqui because I thought it would be great to get perspective from everybody. But there's all the scheduling issues back and forth.
You got to do it because we'll have some fun. We can have a little.
Can you make it happen, man?
Yeah, we'll make it. I'll fight for it.
Sir, can we organize it, please? I would love to do that. I think it'd be a blast.
I will tell Marty if he doesn't come, we'll put an empty chair here. We'll just address the empty chair. If he doesn't, I think we'll get Siddiqui here.
Would
Maybe
you be
Marty.
cool if we ran it outside of Somerville?
What's that?
If we ran it in Boston, would you be cool with that?
Yeah. Tell Marty he can pick the spot.
Well, you tell him. I don't have.
I'll tell
contact
him.
him.
We'll tell him. But I forgot the question. So yeah, I've had
that's
plenty of
beef?
beefs over time.
We know.
I have plenty
I
of
know
beefs.
we talked about the Barstool one last time.
Oh yeah, but political ones with other elected officials, yeah, they've happened on the local, at the state level. I won't go into all of them. But I'll just.
Why are you smiling about it? You
Because
like
I
it.
think about it because I was thinking about the Green Line extension, and some of the arguments we have behind closed doors with state officials,
And you like that you won.
well, I won, but I won't repeat everything I said in those meetings, and they were pretty direct, and we were pretty angry about it. Yeah, so we've had them; they happen. I mean,
And you like it.
yeah, I love it. I love the action. I love the action.
I know you. I seen you on CBS. Like you like going up there.
Oh
and
yeah,
getting fired
I
up.
tell you something. I've been invited on Fox News. People, why you go on there? Says it's an easy debate to have. And you remember Nick Cavuto? I don't watch Fox News. I don't know if he's even still on there. The guy Nick Cavuto. And
I don't.
I was one of their big people there.
What was he
Invited
trying
me.
to slam you?
Well,
on?
I was on Sanctuary Cities, and we had a very respectful and fiery debate. He even respected. Gave me a nice note back. Thanks for coming on. Most people wouldn't go on there, but I'm like, I'll take it on. Want to have a debate about it? Let's do it.
That's why I like why Tulsi Gabbard goes up on Fox. I think it's great.
Yeah.
We had the state lead from Yang and Tulsi up here.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Both really interesting campaigns.
Yeah. The point about having those conversations is, I know where they're going to come from, but never let the lie become the truth. No, you're wrong. And then explain why you're wrong. So for me, I didn't find those to be uncomfortable. I mean, there are a few different types of shows maybe I wouldn't do, but let's just say I've done them, and I've had that. So I liked it. I like the fiery debate, especially when you're fighting for something you believe in. It's an easy one. It's an easy one.
Do you ever wonder like what type of message that conveys? Like, is it like I'm feeding into negativity too much? Do you ever think about that, or do you think it's just part of the game?
I think it's when you have that conversation, whether it's been there or my having the debates with the sheriff from Bristol County, who's the same sheriff who wanted to send immigrant prisoners down to build a wall in Mexico, Massachusetts sheriff. So
that's a recent beef.
Yeah. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. And, I think it's important that we give context to what we're talking about. It's not always about yelling. And the facts don't lie. And here are the facts, and here's where you find them, and here's the context. And you can have an intelligent, albeit passionate debate, and it doesn't have to be about yelling that you're a racist or you're wrong or you're white. No, it's about, well, here's what your argument says to people. Here's what that policy, the impact it has on families in cities and towns, and here what the facts really say about immigration, undocumented immigration. And I think you can speak to that. It's very, very powerful when you got the facts and data on your side. It really is.
Hey. Any last-ditch questions from you two?
No.
Well, dude, I had a great time again. Can you give
Absolutely.
any, just for any young people listening, make it sexy, why they should go out and at least put a vote in?
Listen, if you come up for early voting up at City Hall, that's City Hall. You can go to our website, www.somervillema.gov. Come up, and if you spot me, I will treat you to a cup of coffee and maybe something more special to drink in my office. How's that?
Whoa.
Better yet, I will come down.
Is
if
this a
you're
promise?
gonna, yeah, come up. You find me in the hallway. Coffee's on me.
Is it Keurig? Or is it good coffee?
Admittedly, it's a Keurig, but I have an espresso machine, so I'll make you an espresso.
Dude, I got a
How's that?
Keurig too.
I have an espresso from Joe. A cup of Joe with Joe.
Nice. That
Right.
should be your podcast name.
All right, absolutely.
Hey, thank you for this.
Hi, I'm Joe Curtatone, and that was my Platinum Hour.